Okay, so this is a quick tutorial to show you how to do tiling blueprints. I'm going to use a resource patch to show you the example. A typical setup for mining might look something like this. Now, if you look at that, you'll notice that it is a repeating pattern. We have a set of 6 miners, 3 on each side of the belt, and a repeating power pole. In this case, because it's wooden power poles, it only has a limited reach. But every odd miner, so 1, 3, 5, 7, on each side, we have a power pole. What we therefore have, because we have a repeating pattern, we have an opportunity to do a simple blueprint that we can then tile. So for example, if we just do a copy paste, that is exactly the same as that. We can see that it goes blue. If you go off and it doesn't match, it will show you the red. If we then go there, we'll see that it's exactly the same again. And if we go there, it's partly the same. So we would be missing just the one on the end. So we can essentially see, and this is one of the things you need to look for in your blueprints if you want them to be expandable and tileable, is that there are repeating patterns. But not only is it repeating along horizontally, we can repeat it vertically and give the same thing as well. So if we were to do build miners here, here and here, then we would see that there is vertical repetition as well. In other words, that, and if there was material there, that as well, are the same as well. Therefore, what we can do is, with a blueprint, instead of copying the whole patch and sort of trying to fit it around everything and do it that way, we can have like a 2x3 effectively miner grouping here. So we create a blueprint out of that. Now that on its own won't tile. So if we've got that blueprint. If we drag that anywhere, it will just try and randomly put in. You see how it's putting all those power poles and all that sort of thing. So that's not what we want. What we want to do is to edit this blueprint. So we'll put it in there. We want to edit this blueprint and use snap to grid. Now, it's called grid because the entire game is grid based. All of these, when we talk about this being a 3x3 entity, it means it's 3 tiles. It's effectively 3 meters. This is a 1x1 entity. This is a 1x1 entity. So it takes up 1x1 square. So the grid that it's talking about is that 1, 2, 3 by 1, 2, 3. Okay. So the entire size of this blueprint is 9x9 because we've got 3 there and 3 there. So, and each of those is 3 wide. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's 9 wide. Now similarly, we only have 2 miners, but of course we've got a power pole, a belt and a power pole, and they're 1, 1, 1. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and then another 3 and another 3. So the entire blueprint is 9x9. Now there are 2 types of ways of doing snapping to grid. There's the absolute, and it says in the tooltip how that works. There's a global grid, and the coordinates are relative to the global grid. So if we left it on that, we would get a blueprint that happens to tile. So effectively they go next to each other, basically. So it moves 9 across and then 9 down, and that's fine. Now that would work for this patch, for this one thing that we've done. But if we go to another patch, this one here, for example, you see it's completely mismatched to the alignment of that patch. Okay, so what we want actually is a different type of snapping. What we want is the relative snapping. Now that gets rid of that. You see that XY coordinate there, that disappears because we're now not using the global grid, we're now using a local grid. And that grid works whenever we place the first blueprint down. Okay, so it'll work in a relative sense according to that. It's also kept this flag in the middle here. This is telling us where the center of the blueprint is. Okay, that's like a reference point. So if we do this again, right, we've now got a blueprint that we can put anywhere. You see, it's not snapping to that weird always 9x9 situation. So we can put it. So we could potentially put this down and do that again. But notice the power poles are wrong. That's not where we want the power poles. We want the power poles to overlap. And that's because we need to edit the size of the grid, basically the bit that it uses to snap, in order to get it to repeat in the way that we want. Okay. Now what we're going to edit is basically this green box. Now you can do this with various shortcut keys, but I usually like to do it in the actual editor because I can see it then. So what we want to change, first off, is that we want this power pole to overlap with this power pole. And then that will repeat 1, 3, 5, 7 like I showed. And we can do that very simply by changing the width to 6. Because, I mean, as it happens, it's turning on the back end, but we know that therefore this block is there, because although it's a 9 by 9 situation, the bit that repeats is actually this bit here. So it's these two minors are repeating in sequence down the line. Okay, so if we do that, we now have a blueprint that we know if we click there, it does the exact sort of snapping that we want to do. But it's still not right vertically. We're getting a second set of power poles. So we need to edit it again. Now obviously you would normally do this all at the same time. But if we then adjust the height by 1, we know that that power pole then, when it repeats, when this whole set tiles downwards, it'll overlap with that power pole there. Now you can obviously do it the other way around, and this is what the XY offsets are about. So you remember I said I was slightly surprised when it came out and showed you it on the back. If we wanted it to be the front set of minors, we could move it, we could shift it over by 3 tiles, and now it's doing the front. And similarly, if we wanted this to tile with the bottom power pole, we could move that over by 1. So it's now looking at the bottom one. It's exactly the same. It's just your personal preference as to how you want it to tile and how you understand it to tile. But now we have a blueprint that as we move it backwards, it is exactly showing what we want. And as we move it up and down, it is exactly showing what we want. And because it's a relative blueprint, we can do that on any patch. So if we go to this patch here, obviously these power poles are different because I just threw them in, but we get the same repeating. We have to hold shift because it's telling us there's things in the way, but we would get the same repeating effect. Yeah, the minors are all exactly the same place, and all it's doing is putting in a different set of power poles. Okay, so that's how you do repeating blueprints, and I use that a lot. It's a very useful tool, and I will use it in smelting and that sort of things as well. Now that we're ready to mine these materials, the next thing we need to do is process them. So there's a link to a quick tutorial showing you how to do a smelting array on screen now. I've been Trismegistus, and this has been a quick tutorial.